Journeys ended, journeys begun. We have a multiplicity of journeys in our readings today. Our first reading from the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah is talking about the hope and the joy that the people will experience as they come back from exile in Babylon. That the young and the old will dance together, the blind and the lame. The blind will see, the lame will jump. For God has restored his people, has fulfilled his promise. Obviously, those who selected the readings were setting us up for the gospel. We have an interesting gospel today in the curing of Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus. Normally, in the gospel, when a cure takes place, the name of the person is rarely given, at least not in Matthew, Mark, or Luke. But this time, we are told his name is Bartimaeus. We're at the very end of the central portion of the Gospel of Mark. It began way back in chapter 8. We're now at the end of chapter 10. And it began with a scene that we're all familiar with. It was the healing of a blind man. And in that healing, Jesus made mud, spit in his hand, and made mud, put the mud on the eyes of the blind man, and he could see. We're not given that man's name. But he went out and he proclaimed the wonders of this God. And in the time of Mark, there was a problem. People who were interested in Jesus were interested in this great wonder worker. You can almost see it from the first blind man. Wow, can you believe what he did for me? Look, last week I couldn't see, now I can see. This is great. Jesus, the wonder worker. And you've heard both Deacon Bill and I say that the disciples didn't get it. Everybody else got it, but the disciples didn't. What Mark is alluding to is that frequently we get the wrong thing. We get it, but we get it wrong. And so as we bring this end to conclusion, we have the curing of another blind man. Because the next chapter is the beginning of the Passion in the Gospel of Mark. And he brings it to conclusion with a wonderful scene. It's not about the healing. It's about the one phrase that says, take courage. He's calling you. In another translation, it says, fear not. Jesus wants to speak with you. Take courage. How often do we live our lives in fear? How often are we afraid of what God might say? You know, do that. Otherwise, God's going to get you. One day you'll have to stand before God and answer for that. Well, that's true. But fear will only get us so far in life. Instead, the disciples go to Bartimaeus, who calls out. How often people who are afraid reach that point where they just cry out, somebody help me, please. And Bartimaeus does that. And the disciples say, fear not. Take courage. He's calling you. And when he comes over, Jesus doesn't say, so what sin did you commit? He doesn't say, what did you do wrong? Because that would be the natural thing. For a person who is blind, obviously it's the punishment for sin. Instead, he says, what do you want? I want Jesus to ask me that question. When I stand before the Lord for judgment, I don't want to hear him say, you know, Roy, I got this list, as he throws down the scroll and says, let's talk about, I really want Jesus to say, Roy, what do you want? I want to see. And at the end, he once again gets it. That this is not Jesus the wonder worker. Because it says, while Jesus tells him, go on your way, it says he responds by going with Jesus along the way. The way, the original name for the followers of Christianity. Followers of the way. And the very next chapter is the way to the cross. And beyond that, to the resurrection. that Jesus really is the suffering servant, who connects with the pains and the fears of our life, and calls us into something that is deeper, and sends into our life men and women who are signs, like the disciples, who come to us and say, fear not. The past 17 years, Antoinette has been that. Antoinette has been that person who has said to this community, fear not, we can do this. And she has led us, as we've welcomed the Word among us during the Advent season, with lanterns and with presenting the book, knowing that the Word lives in our community. She's led us to the empty tomb. She's led us also to the holy hot tub of whatever saint we're worrying about here. But she's led us through all of these moments and has enabled us to see the presence of the living Christ here in our community. And so I guess we say to Antoinette, as she has said to us, fear not. Because as you begin a new journey into retirement, this community goes with you in spirit. We're not all coming to your house, but well, maybe. But this community stays with you as friends, as fellow believers in the way that leads to the heart of Jesus Christ, into the love of his Father. Thank you for the service you provided. Thank you for reminding us. Journey's ended, journey's begun. We journey along the way.